Hey all, Blake here with another video, and hopefully you didn't notice because I had some pre-prepared videos, but I had recently got back from a 2-week trip away. And I know this is a source of a lot of anxiety for people who keep fish, whether it's 1 tank or 40, that you're not quite sure what to do if you go away. Do you have to go and find a friend to feed them all? Do you have to teach someone how to do maintenance while you're away? And is there any other easier solution? So I thought today I'll run you through what I did to prepare my fish room for such a trip, and I thought I'd give you some pitfalls to avoid and some tips for success. So let's jump straight into the video. So absolutely, first and foremost, I do want to kick off with some pitfalls to avoid, because that way if anybody skips through part of this video, this is the part that I most want you to hear. So I think it's really common for people to think, all right, well, the day before I leave, I'll just take 10 times the normal food that I feed and dump that in the aquarium. Then there'll be spare food, you know, for that rainy day that they can peck at whilst they're hungry while I'm away. But this is actually a really, really bad idea, because what's gonna happen is they're not gonna eat that uneaten food because it's gone all gross since the initial feeding. It's gonna fester, create sort of ammonia, and you're not going to be home to notice these issues, water change them out, siphon up that uneaten food, and all those other things. So it might seem like a good idea to just give them a whole bunch of food before they leave, but really you want to keep consistent with your feeding, because all of a sudden dumping a bucket of food in the aquarium, well, you don't have that bacteria established to keep up with the ammonia that's going to be created from the breaking down of that food. Another thing people often do is go and buy those holiday blocks and long-term tablets and things, but food is generally pretty low quality, and I find that there's not too many that the fish actually eat. So for me personally, in my experience, and I've gone away a number of times whilst maintaining a fish room, I find that it's better to just not put anything in at all rather than a holiday block or any excess food. So now that that's covered off, I will talk about some things that you can do to provide some long-term food so that your fish will have some sort of nutrients whilst you are away. For me, I've got a lot of well-established aquariums and mostly planted tanks, so I know there's going to be plenty of good little microorganisms and things within that substrate and plant matter that the fish are going to be able to feast on whilst I'm away. You might not see it all the time, but there is tons of little infusoria and things that, especially nano fish, that are going to probably be the hardest hit whilst you're away, they're going to be able to eat on that. So if you can, I know you can't just do it the night before you go away, but if you've got a long established aquarium with plants in it, that can go a long way to maintaining good water quality and providing some supplementary food. On top of that, I do have live cultures of black worms, microworms, and vinegar eels. So for the 2 weeks leading up to me going away, I was feeding plenty of these live foods so that maybe some black worms survive and enter the substrate, and then an opportunistic fish whilst I'm away, we might see a little black worm poke its head up out of the substrate and get a meal that way. Obviously, some foods like microworms and baby brine shrimp, they're not going to last forever in your water, so I still wouldn't go ahead and overfeed on any of these things. Black worms are fully aquatic, so when I can, I try to just at least get some black worms to escape into the substrate of all of my aquariums. And I believe that overall it's just beneficial to have as that part of the ecosystem, so most of my aquariums have live black worms in them. The aquariums that I maintain that don't have live plants for whatever reason, maybe they've got some aggressive cichlids that are going to shred them up, or some larger fish. For those ones, I collected up some duckweed from my planted tanks and supplemented that into the non-planted tanks, just so there would be some of that little micro critters and also the plant matter to help with the water quality whilst I was away. A couple of days before I went away, I just did a big 50% water change, which was usual anyway. Going away for 2 weeks, doing a 50% water change before I leave, I was confident that that wouldn't have any adverse effects and we wouldn't see any major deterioration in the water quality, because that is the typical schedule. But I would say as well, don't do it the day before you leave, because just give it a day so that you can notice, you know, if there's any bacterial blooms or anything that you might want to work on. You know, that can sometimes happen with the water change. Maybe you forget the dechlorinator or something. We're all human, and I think that especially when we've got a lot of things going on in our mind before we leave for a trip away, that's something that can slip through. So don't do it the morning of or the night before that you're going away. Just give it some time so that you can make sure that your water change was successful. I also made a point to add a whole bunch of botanicals to each aquarium that wanted the lower pH, because once again it would grow some really great biofilm and supplementary little critters and food for the fish to feast on whilst I was away. So that's all I did. I didn't feed any of my fish whilst I was away. I just knew that there would be some nice high quality water and some little critters for them to eat on. Even my nano fish like the CPDs, some fry, I have some betta fry and all sorts of other little fish around here that would perfectly fine for 2 weeks away. If I was going away for longer than that, or I really wasn't confident that there was enough sort of micro critters in the aquarium to sustain life, I have in the past created a little clip using my phone, or better still, inviting somebody over prior to me leaving to run them through a feeding schedule for the fish room or the fish tank. I would suggest with this, don't get them to come daily, because if they are slightly overfeeding, then that can create an issue, and that's worse than underfeeding because of that bacterial colony not keeping up with the ammonia. So get them to come, maybe every 3 or 4 days, and find a simple food. So what I'll do is get, a family member, say, all right, just a handful, in all of these little tanks, and I've actually recorded me doing it before and actually putting a quantity in my hand and saying this here is how much you want to feed on average to a tank. Just keep in mind that if they're not fish people, this is all foreign to them. They're probably going to be pretty concerned about creating a disaster within your fish room. So go easy on them, create something that's simple. Flake food works really well because it's pretty forgiving, it's pretty adaptable, and most fish are going to eat it. But in any case, at least leave them some notes, or I've seen other people do color coordinated stickers and things like that. I just stick to one food, one rough amount, and that's pretty much as good as it's going to get. So it's not going to keep them over long term, but really you just want to fill those gaps whilst you are away. Overall, I'd suggest don't sweat it. It's really, the fish are super resilient, way more resilient than we give them credit for, especially when we get concerned about not getting that daily feeding in. When you go away for a period of 2 weeks, and you come back and nobody's even noticed you're gone, you'll realize that maybe we don't need to stress about every single day feeding our fish, and sometimes it can actually be good because it will reduce algae with less nutrients going into the aquarium. Overall, hopefully you liked this video. If you've got any further questions or concerns, please drop them down below. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.